a lot of you guys, if you were going to kind of launch a new business model, you're alone. And then I was able to team up with ends and help them with ends, which agent social kind of Wednesday. So and million plus pages here, really successful channel. And then recently for myself, something that I kind of the state prayer and a lot of main technology really hard about it and really got excited. So I had a little bit of experience doing kind of what I would consider a startup, whether it's a blog or a tech blog or a group blog or how do you put something out there in the world today when you can get people's attention pretty easily, but how do you build something really special? What are kind of the core business values and philosophies that went behind these things becoming successful? Really, these are unique to me. I didn't write the book on this, but there's a book you guys should all buy. I have no equity in you buying it, no affiliate link to drop, but it's called The Lean Startup. It's a guy named Eric Ries, and that slide is the best I could do to sum up the book in one slide. So, and ironically with dot loop, I thought that was interesting. Minimize total time through the loop, right? And this is the way startups that are running right now, they're looking at this like the Bible. So you have an idea, you have to build it. And to build it, you have to have somebody that writes code. And then once you've built it, you have to measure it. You have to look at the data that you get from shipping it. And then you learn from that and you put that into the next idea. That is a lean startup, and it's a never-ending cycle. So that's another thing you have to keep in mind. It's constant iteration, and we'll talk about things like minimum viable product. We'll talk about things like shipping versus kind of sitting on code or sitting on, and you guys obviously don't ship code. You guys ship recruiting material. You guys ship marketing pieces to your community. You guys ship training to your agents. So it's an analogy for a better way to run a business, a more efficient, cost-effective way to run a business. So next slide, Steve. If you guys haven't seen that book, check it out. But I thought I would start with this because as a broker right now, you probably feel like there's a lot of forces working against you. Competition, not just at the local level like before, but some of the search portals that are national, you may consider your competition. You may consider sites, .com that, the way I think of like an Amazon, there's sites in your industry that if you're a broker, you would consider those to be a competing site that you're trying to outrank. You're trying to take away eyeballs from them or use them to get eyeballs for you. And so this is really important because they're going to be better funded than you. But here's where it's critical. Better funded and inauthentic loses. And here's why. When you have competitors that already have an established base, so let's say Zillow has 32 million uniques a month, Realtor.com and Trulia, you add them up, it's like 100 million people a month. So they already have established base. It doesn't matter. If you can put out a superior product that's economically delivered to an appropriate target market, right? That's an effective weapon. So when you guys hear all these bloggers talking about like niche or like hyper local or like long tail keywords, you guys, that's what they're talking about. They're basically saying, listen, these well-funded people in other companies, and this could be another brokerage in your town too. This could be a mega agent that has a big marketing budget against you, not just the national portals. Don't let me make it seem like it's just them. But if they have more funding, you have to go deeper. That's all it is. And so when you look at things like walk score, there's some really cool things happening in the space of like data that gets all the way down to the grassroots level. Things like HomeSnap, where somebody actually takes a picture of a property, and then that picture from right then, that second, is available to anybody. Kind of data that no one else can get. You need to be authentic, and you have to deliver superior products. That's the other thing. You can't throw your hands up and say, oh, these guys are awesome, so we're not going to compete. You have to find the right company that's going to help you compete. You're not going to build it yourself, but there's a ton of amazing vendors in our space now. So don't be afraid that because you're not the most funded, listen, Facebook announced their search on the day that I announced the search for Facebook. They obviously are well funded compared to me and Jimmy. So just keep that in mind. But we're more authentic. We didn't build a search for everyone on Facebook. We built it for realtors and brokers only that want to like learn about tech only. And so because we're that deep into the trench, we don't really have competition. So hopefully there's a takeaway there. Next slide. Experts are wrong. So this is obviously ironic as someone who considers himself an expert in the industry, who's obviously has you tuning in, so at least someone thinks that I have something great to share today. But sometimes you have to ignore the wisdom of experts, and here's why. A lot of times, if you go to a traditional website vendor or CRM company, they might understand our space, but they don't understand your business, right? They don't get down to what that specific demographic, that specific price range. And so you need to be the driver of the innovation, even if you don't know which buttons to press. So you need to seek outside people's advice, but just understand that they're not going to ever be more of an expert than you. So while a lot of people, as soon as Facebook said, hey, we have search, said, you're screwed, and some really smart people said that, I wasn't really worried, you guys. I didn't really care what the experts said. I'm not a big fan of Monday morning quarterback bloggers. I'm a fan of operating. And you'll see why I'd never get too worried with the next couple points, because when you're a lean startup, you can change, and you can change quickly. So next slide. Realize that people use the web differently than you. This is really critical. When you have, a lot of times we do conference. We have a whole conference. It's great here at Direct, you guys. It's the consumer conference, right? And we have consumer panels at Inman. People always want to know what the consumer is thinking. Well, at the end of the day, a lot of you guys aren't real savvy with technology, and if your consumer is, they are using the web different than you. So you might go, I would just try to find a local company and call them. Well, that's not what I would do. So you need to understand that there's an information gap that you have to fill for me, that until you fill it, I'm not going to reach out to you. And so one of the keys here is a great takeaway. When you're testing like website designs or calls to action or anything that you're doing that would be like a landing page or a lead form or an email subject line, you want to think about interaction and simplicity before you layer the design. And that's one of the things that obviously saves costs and increases time of being able to ship things. If I can go on Facebook and I can grab a photo from Google Images and I can throw it on my wall and say, hit like if you guys think this is an awesome house, you want to learn more. If I can do that and it's simple and it's quick, before I write like a whole article about that, which is kind of adding design, if you will, it's really interesting. So just think about the web is different now. You need to use it different. Your consumers are using it different. And if you go to the next slide, Steve, here's one of the best ways to start learning. You have to get out of the building. This is another great best practice from startups. They do write code and they do geek out, but at the same time, they really like obsess about getting in front of their users. So whether that's at a conference, whether that's at a tweet up, things like that. And so as a broker, it kind of has this visual of like sitting with people kind of all around you coming to you. That's just not the way it works anymore. So if you haven't been to a Starbucks in the last year and just went up to like 5 random people and showed them a couple of real estate apps and asked them what they thought about it, you have no idea what you should be doing. So you have to get off the couch, get out of the building, get out from behind the desk, figure out what they want. And you also, this is another critical takeaway, what do your customers' customers want? Not just what are your customers are the agents if you're a broker, but your customer's customer is the consumer. So if you are never dealing or interacting with the end user, that's what we call it in tech world, you don't really know what to do for your middleman, which is your customer or your agent. And so you've got to get out there, you've got to get deep in the trenches with these people. And a good example for us would be we built Curator for realtors. We didn't build it for brokers. We didn't build it for vendors. But vendors are loving it because they can kind of get the pulse about the realtors, and brokers are loving it, vice versa. So we want to know what brokers, vendors, and agents think about it, not just the one level. So you guys have to go deeper. So next slide, Steve. Fast and economical. I mean, I know you guys all want to be that way. I look at that slide and my first thought there is like, that sounds so easy. But the visual here, guys, is that you may be driving an oil tanker and those just don't turn around real fast. And you need a speedboat more than ever, right? Because the new coolest product, the new coolest site, the new coolest email, again, you have this groundswell where the workforce, the agents, the million people out there doing the work are bringing you guys ideas and tools now. So you have to be nimble. And lean startups, what they do is, I'm going to go into it deeper on the next slide. It's called minimal viable product. You guys should write that down. MVP, super easy to remember. And so when you build this model that we're going to cover into how you run your business, what ends up happening is that you never waste too much and you never waste too much time. So if you fail fast. I think Seth Godin says, fail fast forward, right? And you're going to fail online a million times. Like, think about like a baseball player, 3 hits out of 10, he's in the Hall of Fame. Well, if you get 3 leads out of 10 visitors, you're in the Hall of Fame on the web. So this is not like 99% conversion as a goal. So you have to fail quickly and you have to fail cheaply when you do try things. If you're going to suit up like an email marketing program for your brokerage, you can't invest 10K in that without at least kind of being ready to go with it, right? I mean, you can't just look at this full deep integration. You have to kind of, like one example with Dotloop I should use. Obviously, they're the sponsor and the host today. If you have like 18 agents in your office that use Dotloop and love it, then that's a pretty good indicator that you should adopt it, right? And so they kind of did the testing for you. It's free for them or inexpensive for them. It's fast for them to get it going and set it up. And so they adopt it. And so then for you, you look and say, what are they using? And you align with what your agents are using or provide something else, of course. But, you know, fast and economical sure beats kind of like slow and bloated. And I think a lot of brokerages are slow and bloated. So next slide for me, Steve. MVP, I wanted to get deeper into this. This is actually really critical. I'm going to give you guys some examples of an MVP versus a full-blown launch or push or initiative, because a startup doesn't have a lot of resources. Like, you know, I'm running Curator with Jimmy. We have one developer, but we have day jobs, we're traveling, we're doing all these things. So we don't have necessarily the time to put out like a full-blown release or a full-blown product. So instead, what these startups do is they do a minimum viable product. And so the goal is that instead of kind of coming up with this huge full-blown campaign around a great idea you had while you were drinking, right? You actually, instead of taking a leap of faith assumptions, as it says there, you actually just get something out to the world and let them give you the feedback. So here's one example of this. You're considering redesigning your entire website. That, you know, most of you probably are feeling that pain. Well, you could start with something like a logo instead of a website. So instead of spending 10 G's on a custom site, you could spend 800 on a custom logo, and instead of actually getting a custom logo first, you could, you know, potentially share the proofs of the logo with your agents and with your sphere to get their feedback on it, and they almost choose it for you, right? So now all of a sudden you've gone from a $10,000 website investment to focusing on, let's just ship this logo and then let's build something else. Maybe you then add an IDX. Maybe you then add a frame and a theme. So you can't ship the whole thing anymore, because as you guys know, you get version 7, version 8 comes out, right? So minimum viable product mentality, you know, think about considering doing videos on YouTube. Well, that's a big investment. That's a big time spend. That's going to be something you should dedicate a lot of resources to. Well, a minimum viable product of that would be an email to your database that says, we're thinking about doing videos of every home. Click here and let us know if you think that's a good idea. And if 0 people click, you know, that's a just way to avoid doing anything. So this MVP mentality is huge for us. Next slide, Steve. And now that you have kind of this mentality of building these really lightweight things, now you ship. And this is where a lot of people get stuck. and here's really my 2-sentence sales pitch on why you should ship. And ship just means deliver your idea to the world, okay? And again, that could be mail, that could be a business card, that could be a logo, that could be an email, whatever it is. But you can't judge what you don't deliver to the consumer. And so Jimmy and I can have like these 8,000 conversation threads in Basecamp that we manage our projects in, but it doesn't matter if we never do any of it. And so if you have a minimum viable product stance and you're willing to ship, it's just a little less scary to ship because you're not shipping these huge heavyweight initiatives. You're shipping lightweight MVPs. Big difference. And the last thing there is indecision is often the worst decision because you sit on an idea and it either gets stale or you lose the passion for it. You know, get it out the door. Again, fail fast, fail forward, and then get back to shipping the next thing. Because listen, when you ship a lot, again, it's okay that 7 of them didn't work, 3 of them did. If you ship one a year, one cool thing a year, you better go 1 for 1 or your whole business is done. So hopefully that's a good takeaway. Next slide. This is going to speak a little bit to the specifics of shipping and then testing. So it's okay to do this like MVP stuff, but you have to test it because if you don't, then you just look like a rookie all the time just throwing this crap out there. The goal is that these MVPs become full-blown things you do. And the only way you're going to make sure you accomplish that is if you test the ship of the lightweight initiatives. So for example, we'll use an email. You're considering doing an email marketing campaign to your agents that uses BombBomb video, right? Our buddies over at BombBomb. So you're going to be the broker who recruits agents using video marketing. Well, A/B testing in that world would be things like the subject line of what the email says. One subject line through MailChimp, you send it out, or BombBomb, you put it in there and it says, the best broker in town has a message for you, right? The other one, you put it in there that says, YouTube video watch instantly, right? And so we're shipping this little lightweight email through BombBomb. We did it on our webcam. We're trying out this new thing to see if people like it. So not only did we ship it, now we ship 2 things really because we A/B tested the messaging. And so now we have data that we can look at and say, okay, when I said live on YouTube for my email, everybody clicked. When I said I'm the best broker, nobody clicked. And so now that MVP got better and it got pushed a little bit closer to being a real product, right? So the A/B testing, different versions of a product are offered at the same time. The goal is to observe changes in behavior, measure the impact, and have an actionable metric, right? So if you send 2 and one does double, the next time you send that one and a new test, and you get rid of the old test. So again, it's another quick thing that you can do. There's a couple technologies here, you guys. MailChimp makes this simple. Hello Bar. Actually, Steve, pull up curator.com really quickly. I'll give a little self-plug. But at the top of our site, you guys see the little black line? The best conversations are in our email newsletter, right? And I misspelled newsletter, so that's embarrassing, but I'll fix that later. Hello Bar is a plugin that does that for us. Anyone can use it on any site. But what you do is when you use it, there's another one that says watch our live show now. And so after 30 days, we can look at that header in Hello Bar, and we can see that 60% of the people clicked on watch our show, or 10% of the people clicked on hook me up. See how it says hook me up on the button? So we can A/B test what a button says. See how the top bar is black? Steve could go on the back end of that right now and make it like pink for February Breast Cancer Month, and we could see the data difference that provided. So Hello Bar, and then also MailChimp. Really great things for A/B testing. They kind of build them in. Aweber, another great email system. Back to the slide, Steve. But the bottom line is this: if you can send one thing but test it twice, with just 2 for 1, kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Next slide for me. This is another really important thing, and this is something that I obsess about, and I know the people on the call that know me, they know this and they believe this. Probably I do this to an annoying degree, I mean, if I'm being honest, but I just love feedback. So kind of always be testing is important, but always be asking, right? And so you have to provide simple ways for people to give you quick feedback that you can use for these changes and these kind of iterations that we call them. So you have to obsess about user feedback. You can use social, right? You can go on Facebook and say, what do you think about this? You can use surveys, things like Real Satisfied for our industry, kind of buyer and seller data for feedback, but also SurveyMonkey is a great option. There's software. There's actually a website. Steve, go on the web real quick. I want to pull up a couple of these. Go to the tech support group for agents. I want to show a real life example just really quickly. So on Facebook, go to the tech support group, that link I sent you earlier. I just want to show a real life example of kind of using social to get feedback. So I asked this question on your behalf. So you guys are all brokers, and the group we're going to go into Facebook here is all agents. And so I wanted to ask this question because I wanted to just show you guys what it meant to use social to get feedback about how you should run your business. I know that might sound crazy to you guys. It looks like Steve kind of, looks like Zuckerberg is not liking Steve right now. There we go. Cool. So I asked a question earlier. If your broker could buy one thing for you, if they were going to buy one thing for you, what would it be? So scroll down a little bit and keep going. You'll find it in a second. This is my last post after that. There it is. So there's 71 responses, right? And so, to me, this is using social to get data. So like leads was by far the biggest answer. They want leads that are convertible that are already filtered for them. And so if you now know that like, hey, that's what agents want me to spend money on, paperless came up a lot. People want that part of it. Read through there. So when you can ask and say, hey, if I were to buy Dotloop for you guys, would you do it and enjoy the fact that we were paperless? If you get like 50 people that say yes, you guys call our number later today, right? That's the point. So with social, you can do this. Go to SurveyMonkey. Just go to the homepage of SurveyMonkey. That's an awesome group, you guys. This is another great one. Really easy, really free. Obviously Facebook groups are free. SurveyMonkey, another free one. Just go to like how it works real quick, Steve. It's probably a good visual on that tab. But this is another way to just build a really quick survey. So see how it says easy question creation. You can brand it to yourself. And this is just a way to collect some responses through email, through social, and analyze the data. And again, just a quick way to get a response. Hey, here's my website. I have 10 questions that I want you guys to help me with about the color and all this stuff. Please let me know. So SurveyMonkey's a great one. Another cool one, go to LaunchRock real quick, Steve. This is another really cool thing. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but you already had it open. This is another startup kind of a technology that we use to get people excited about what's coming. So for example, what I would do if I were a broker and I signed up for Dotloop, I would set up a custom LaunchRock page that I would start using in what I call a whisper campaign. And what that does is just let you put up something that's very vague, but it's kind of direct, but there's only one thing to do. If you go to the top again, Steve, what these do is they say, hey, something big is coming. Give us your email and you'll be the first to know. Very simple. And so if I were launching Dotloop as a brokerage, I would get my consumers and everybody excited. What happens, you guys, when you just get them to say, hey, I'm interested when it's ready, go. When you follow up when it's ready, the open rates and all the data goes through the roof. So LaunchRock's another kind of place where messaging can be A/B tested. You can have people tweet for you. They can socially share it. Here's another thing. If you build a LaunchRock, let's say you guys are going to do some crazy initiative in Tampa, and you build a LaunchRock page saying, hey, this is coming soon. LaunchRock is an MVP because the product doesn't even have to exist for you to see if people are interested in signing up. So again, if you get a brilliant idea, set up a LaunchRock and see if people opt in. If they do, maybe you're onto something. If they don't, back to the drawing board. So I love that tool, you guys. LaunchRock I've used successfully on a few ventures now. So thanks, Steve. Back to the slides. All right, pivot. This is such a cool word, and people use it all the time in the tech space. But a pivot is, let me explain a pivot. So a pivot, I'm going to use the technology world. There was a company called Gowalla, and they were the second most popular company next to Foursquare. So you guys know what Foursquare is, where you check in and stuff. There was a company called Gowalla, and they were basically the number two, you know, the way it's like Facebook, Twitter, it was like Foursquare, Gowalla. And they were super talented. They had the most amazing design. They had a better interface. They had better kind of gaming and badges. But Foursquare was first, and they just couldn't get past them. And so they made a pivot, and their pivot was that Facebook bought them and said, your app's great, but we're destroying it, and it's going away, and you're going to just build our mobile stuff. And so if you own Gowalla, and that moment comes, and you put 8 years of your life into building this app that has 30 million users, you're actually doing great by any standards, and then you have this opportunity to pivot, that's a pivot. So a pivot is like, you do the email marketing, nobody opens it, you kill the idea, you pivot away, right? So you can pivot away from an idea, or you pivot kind of closer to an idea. And so what you'll notice with products, like look at Evernote, they're a great company to study. They have the main Evernote product, but then they ship a lot of MVPs. Evernote for food, Evernote for this and that, Evernote for whatever, good Lord. You know, there's like 50 little offshoots of Evernote now. Those are their MVPs because they want to always be MVP in shipping while they're still working on the mothership. And so what happens is if their app for food gets a lot of exposure, a lot of users, and no usage, they will pivot away from it or they will change it. The point is you have to be flexible and willing to change the decisions that you make. Change the course of the ship's direction. And again, a speedboat just makes that easier. So the infrastructure and all the kind of technologies. I know one thing we're doing with dotloop, we're focusing on our API tremendously because what that allows us to do is when you call and say, hey, we want to make this work inside of X, we're going to say yes to that question. So we had to pivot away from just being only come to dotloop and live where we live. That was the goal, I'm sure, at some point for Austin. But when you have these consumers say, hey, we need this, or Keller Williams or Remax or Exit Realty or any of these other big corporations say we need this, we are willing to pivot and change the way we build our whole product and business. So that's a startup mentality. dotloop's a startup, by the way. $7.5 million in funding, Entrepreneur Magazine cover. So they're a great startup to look at as to the way they're operating. They're killing it with branding. You know, kudos to them. So next slide for me. Got about 5 minutes, and then we're going to do some Q&A. Buzz, which a lot of people probably would think is my specialty, but the reason they would think that is only because that's what you see. You don't see a lot of the things that I just went through because it's not something that to the end user is happening. Does that make sense? I mean, people don't go to the curator and go, oh, they're testing their hello bar message. Like, it doesn't impact their usage of our product at all, but it makes us better at building what they need, right? And so people don't see those things, you guys. What people see and where you guys want to start is buzz. And there's a reason that I left it this deep, you know, into the equation because it's not where you start, it's where you end up, and it's where you start the next phase. And if you remember that first screen, it all just starts again. So again, you don't get to quit ever. So free promotion, again, social and email marketing and all these great opportunities. The problem is you're not going to outspend, like for example, companies like Remax and these corporations, Coldwell Banker and Realogy, you know, they put millions and millions of dollars into things like Google AdWords, right? So if the three biggest companies in the country are paying for the search term real estate where you live, you don't really want to like out-dollar them. That's not a lean startup mentality. What you would want to do is just say, okay, what about press releases? You know, I used one called PR Web Search Press Release iReach, small I reach. Press releases are a powerful tool, and you can target them to the local market. Facebook ads, if you're willing to spend a little bit of money for impressions or clicks when you get them, you can get your marketing and your buzz and your new brand or whatever it is you're shipping in front of every person in your city. It's very easy through Facebook ads. You know, things like Google AdWords, right? People are searching for a restaurant, you know, you're number one. People search for a brokerage, you're number one. So they're low cost and no cost ways. The other thing that I did, and that I think you guys probably should do, is what I call influencer marketing. and private demos, right? So before the public can get to what you've built, you have to take about 50 people that live where you're at that are really, really important. That could be a mega agent that you want to keep. That could be a mega agent you want to recruit. That could be your mom. Whoever it is that's like critical to your business, you need to, before the public sees any of these things you put out to the world, put it into your repertoire of doing private one-on-one demos with influential people in your market. For me, that's social people, tech people. For you, that could be the mayor, if you know him, right? So if you're going to launch this insane thing for your community, give the mayor a demo first. Hopefully my Twitter people are hearing me on that one. That was a good one. So there's so much noise with social. There's so much crap. One of the blessings of being an MVP lean startup model is that when you do ship, you feel very good about what you're shipping. So think about Curator. Curator's powered by Facebook groups that were popular for 2.5 or 3 years before Curator ever existed. So a Facebook group would be kind of a minimum viable product of Curator. And what you're going to build, there's going to be a minimum version. And if you test it, and if you ship it, and if you get feedback on it, and then you're ready to put it out there for real, you're going to feel great about asking for buzz and support because you're going to know that you're putting something out there that people want. So I would rather put out smaller iterations that are guaranteed to work than big, heavy initiatives that, kind of hit or miss. Next slide, Steve. Thanks. All right, so I wanted to give you guys a couple more takeaways, and then we have an offer from Dotloop. So you guys see the paper there. Our goal, it's funny, this is one of my favorite books ever. It's called Rework. The guy on Twitter, you guys should all say what's up to him if you're on Twitter, at Jason Fried, F-R-I-E-D, I believe. It's either I-E-D or E-I-D. But Jason Fried, he's the co-founder of 37 Signals. They make the technology called Basecamp, high-rise. They have millions of users, insanely successful. But they run their business differently. And I read this book a few years ago, and I had some aha moments. And if you just look at some of their little kind of quotes or quips, ASAP is poison, underdo the competition, meetings are toxic, planning is guessing. One of my favorite quotes from this book, you guys, was he said, if your plan is to make a plan, that doesn't count. And I just thought that was so good. Inspiration is perishable. I mean, this is just a really great book. You can see Seth Godin, ignore this book at your own peril. He's actually quoted right there at the top. So Rework I wanted to recommend for you guys. One more book. I wanted to recommend, if you can go one more slide for me, Steve. Uh-oh. Hey, Steve, did I lose you, bud? There we go. Cool. All right. So the last book, and then we're going to go into the offer. We're actually about to give away 5 iPads, so hang in there. The last one is a book that I just finished reading called The One Thing. And it's interesting because I loved Rework, and I also read The 4-Hour Workweek. I should throw that one in there. So the Lean Startup, 4-Hour Workweek, Rework, and Gary Keller just published this, you guys, with Jay Papasan. And this is going to be a big hit. And I thought this was a good way to kind of wrap it up. The 6 lies between you and success, because we always think that we have to run our business a certain way. We always think that something like a to-do list or something like that just seems like something that you should use. But this book is great. I highly recommend it. And I want to go through these. So everything matters equally. That's a lie, right? You have to live by a 20-80 rule. 20% of your actions are going to make 80% of your successes. And then you have to laser focus on those. Multitasking is the worst possible thing you could ever do, and I'm so glad Gary's focusing on that in this book. A disciplined life, that's also kind of BS, you guys. There's no such thing. They explain it brilliantly. Willpower is always on. No, it's not. A balanced life is a good life. No. And big is bad. People think big is bad. So it's a really great read. Some really cool illustrations and graphics. And I know a lot of you guys don't work for Keller Williams, but it's a damn good book, so you should read it. It's not about real estate at all. And I thought that was pretty bold, but I think that this thing's going to be huge. So good work, Gary Keller. Last slide, Steve. I wanted to offer something for the brokers on the call. If there's a way to kind of, in one decision, create a more lean startup as a brokerage. Truly paperless technology is one of those ways to be able to put the technology in the hands of your agents for no cost to them, but then to actually have the data. You know, we talked a lot about measuring, like you can't make better what you don't measure. If you're using a paperless solution right now that does not have a broker-specific feature, if it doesn't provide data to a broker that's relevant to a broker, I want you guys to call, because dotloop was built for agents as an MVP. They can get it, turn it on, use it, and they don't even pay. They can get it that quick, and we have 400,000 plus now with access. But from a broker perspective, we think that kind of to create this latte vision we've been discussing, you know, to create a brokerage that runs like a startup, if you will, we think that the broker has to actually drive the car. And so we have analytics and what we call a dashboard that is unavailable from anywhere else. It basically, I talked earlier about the information gap. If you think about the information gap between how many listings you have and how many closed happen and kind of what's out there floating, that's a big gap for you guys. This closes that gap through technology. It's a really great offer. So I want you guys to call. The first 5 brokers who call and sign up, you guys are going to get a free iPad, no strings attached. So you call 513-246-0940 and you get a free iPad, done deal. If you're an agent, dotloop knows that even if we do a broker thing, a lot of agents tune in. Thank you guys. That's why I love you guys. You can also enter, if you sign your broker up, to get a call. So if we call him and drop your name, you get an iPad if he signs up. So pretty great offer. Call that number now. All right, cool, Steve. So I'm going to do some Q&A. Let's see what time it is. It's 1:40. I got a flight. I'm going to do 10 minutes of Q&A. I think I covered a ton, you guys. These webinars where you're by yourself, it's always just this odd feeling. You know, I feel like that was one of the best class I've ever given, but I have to be honest, like it's really hard to tell. So if you're on Twitter or if you're watching this, just let me know later or let me know in the comments. But I do want to do some questions because I think there might be a bunch. I'm just not sure. So like I said, it's tough with one-way communication. Hey, Jim. So Jim has a question about dotloop. If you guys have any questions about dotloop, please call the number. I'm sorry, you guys, to do that, but I just want to talk about, you know, the content I just covered. And if you guys have any dotloop questions, we don't bite. Our salespeople are awesome. So just call that number, Jim. Thank you, Julie. Pricing page, Gladys, call the number for me. Karen, dotloop does work on the iPad. The iPad app's on the way. But call in, they'll give you the details. Sam, call in. Sorry, dude. I'm going to keep doing that, though. Here's a good one. This is actually a really great question from Gene. So is there a right amount of questions to ask before you annoy your agents? That's actually a really good question, ironically, right? So I want to address that because I agree. And, you know, there was a while on Facebook, you guys probably saw it, where people would just put like Coke or Diet or like pepperoni or cheese or, you know, it was just kind of these questions just to get answers. There was not a lot of soul behind it. So, Gene, here's my answer. Ask as many questions as you can put soul behind. I hope that's not too deep. I hope this was recorded. A lot of people are asking if it was recorded. I'm pretty sure we got it. Where do we post this, Steve? We're going to post this on the dotloop blog, correct? Or we can drop it on the fan page. What about this? You guys that want the recording, go to facebook.com/dotloop. Pull that up real quick, Steve. So if you want the recording, go to facebook.com/dotloop. Right on the wall, you know, make sure you say it was an awesome class, please. Not just I want the recording. But right on the wall, and then tomorrow or the next day, as soon as Steve has the recording, he will drop that right into where you wrote on the wall, and that'll notify you, and it's watch on demand. So easy stuff there. And then I do a show, you guys. I was going to plug this at the very end. Steve, if you could drop the link to the email or just a curator, either way. But I do a show actually tonight, 9:05 p.m. It's called The Water Cooler. The reason we do it, you guys, 42% of realtors do not go to office meetings, and 93% of realtors communicate with their broker less than 15 hours every 30 days. And so what we realized was they didn't really lose a passion for what they did for a living. Instead, they just were able to connect online and get that fix, right? So they still like talking about their craft. They still love sharing ideas. A lot of that's happening in Facebook groups. So the Facebook groups where everybody interacts each day, that content populates our website curator. And then if you click on our show there, Steve, I don't want to oversell this thing. It's kind of a nightmare half the times because we drink a beer while we do it. But, you know, it's just a live show that we do where we bring on an agent or a broker and we talk about our craft. Excuse me. So Steve put a link in the chat for GoToWebinar. So it's really a lot of fun, you guys. If you guys want to tune in, fill out that link. We text you and email you right when we go live. And it's just a lot of fun. We had about 1,500 people last week. And I want to just kind of keep that real for 1 second. Think about that stat. How many conferences have 1,500 people at them? You know, how many office meetings have 1,500 people at them? You know, how many sales rallies for your region have had 1,500 people at them? And so we think we're onto something special. And you guys can mark my words, within 12 months, we'll have 10,000 people every week at this thing. And we're passionate about making it a big success, keeping it really pristine, no sales pitches. We're going to actually maybe partner up a little bit with Dotloop and take it on the road. So if we're at a big conference, we'll have like an episode live from the trade show. So keep in touch with Curator. Steve, pull up the Dotloop slide one more time. All right, cool. I'm hoping the phones are ringing off the hook. Thank you guys so much. I got some really great feedback. I can't read them all, you guys. Thank you. They like that statement about ask as many questions as you can put soul behind. Hey, sometimes you got to just come up with stuff. You can't script those. So brokers, thank you guys for tuning in. I don't do a lot of broker classes. I hope you guys thought this was cool. I'll check out the Facebook wall too, and I'll go say hello. I'll be on Twitter. Thank you guys that tweeted. I haven't looked at Twitter the whole time. It's really hard for me to present and look at Twitter at the same time, so I decided I should focus. So I'm going to hop on Twitter. But thank you guys so much. We really appreciate your support at Dotloop. We're here for you guys if you have any questions. We'll leave the number up, but I'm going to mute myself, and we'll get you guys the recording as soon as we have it. Thanks again.